Okay. Um, the first question we're going to discuss is question number 2. Explore the different levels of social commentary that Shakespeare uses throughout the story. How does he use characterization, character actions, and settings to reveal the flaws of humanity, and how do these flaws ultimately lead to destruction?
In Othello, Shakespeare uses the characters' actions, personalities, and the contrasting setting of Venice and Cyprus to reveal how deeply rooted flaws in humanity, such as jealousy, misogyny, confirmation bias, racism, inevitably leads to emotional collapse and broken relationships.
I think specifically he talks a lot about jealousy by saying that jealousy is a major flaw that humans have in society and can fuel people to do irrational things. He uses the characterization of Iago, who's played as the main antagonist, because one of his main motives is because he's jealous of Cassio and Othello. Specifically on Act 1, Scene 1, when he talks to his friend Rodrigo.
You told me you hated him.
I do hate him, I swear. 3 of Venice's most important noblemen took their hats off to him and asked him humbly to make me his lieutenant, the second in command, and I know my worth well enough to know I deserve that position. But he wants to have things his own way. So he sidesteps this issue with a lot of military talk and refuses their request. I've already chosen my lieutenant, he says. And who does he choose? A guy who knows more about numbers than fighting. This guy from Florence named Michael Cassio. He's a pretty wife, but he can't even control her, and he's definitely never commanded men in battle. He's got no more hands-on knowledge of warfare than an old woman, unless you count what he's read in books.
In Othello, I think Iago's jealous nature toward Cassio shows Shakespeare's social commentary, and I think this jealousy is more systemic developed because I don't think Iago would be jealous of Cassio if he never received the lieutenant's spot.
I agree. I also think that he felt like he was higher than everybody else, which also made him want to do things that got him to be lieutenant. And he thought that he should be the one in charge of everything, and he could do better because he talked down on Othello a lot and thought that he could be way better than him.
I agree with that. I think Iago always felt like his skills were overlooked, especially because he was better in the military, and he was upset that he was addressed as ensign, and Othello just expected him to watch Desdemona.
I kind of disagree with that. I feel like jealousy is part of human nature. It's like something natural that lives in all people. And another example is like Othello is a clear example. Like once his jealousy starts, it leads to violence and tragedy, and makes him doubt people and himself more, and leads to bad influence.
Yeah, I think Othello, in the story of Othello, Shakespeare purposely also changes the setting to reveal the human nature of jealousy, because they eventually start in Venice, where Othello and most of the characters are pretty mellow and they're pretty calm, but then when they move to Cyprus, they become more barbaric because of the war. But I also think I think jealousy is more human nature and rather got revealed with the setting that Shakespeare shifts on the characters. I think secondly, Shakespeare also reveals another major human flaw, which is confirmation bias, or the tendency for people to believe in what they already believe in and only find evidence towards that.
I agree. I think that Othello became blinded of what was really going on because of all the lies he was being fed, and he started to believe everything he was being told about Desdemona. While Iago knew this was happening, so he just kept on feeding him the lies, making him believe more and more, and he acted out and did things, but it was all really because of how he thought he was being betrayed by the person he loved.
An example of this is on Act 3, scene in page 11. Othello says, goodbye, goodbye. If you see anything else, let me know. Tell your wife to watch her. Leave me alone now, Iago.
My lord, I'll say goodbye now. beginning to accept it.
Why did I ever get married? I'm sure this good and honest man sees and knows more, much more than he's doing.
I think he's purposely pointing out the small things so that Othello will believe that his wife is cheating on him. Even though there's no sufficient evidence that Othello ever sees. I think this is also kind of fueled by his own insecurities, his self-insecurity, which he's always had internalized inside of him, which is why he's so prone to confirmation bias because of his insecurities.
I think being told this by a trusted friend, Othello found everything suspicious with the handkerchief, and seeing Desdemona with Cassio, or like anytime she brought him up, he really trusted him and believed everything he said without having actual evidence.
I still think that confirmation bias is like a universal trait, since Iago relied on confirmation bias so much because he already somewhat knew that everybody was really affected by it.
Yeah, although I think Iago does intentionally use confirmation bias, I think it's more of the result of Iago's influence because he only starts believing that his wife is cheating on him. Othello says that. He only believes that after the fact that Iago uses his manipulative tactics. So I think it's not just because it's a human tendency, but I think it's more of because of Iago's deliberate manipulation and the fact that he also has sociopathic tendencies, which have revealed this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, Iago never directly says Desdemona is cheating. Like, he uses like little things like the handkerchief to make Othello feels like Desdemona is cheating on him.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think it's because of the fact that Iago uses this manipulative tactic to try to trick because of his psychological like tendencies to try to manipulate people. I also think that Shakespeare also tries to reveal a major flaw in society of misogyny or like the discrimination towards women because he uses the characterization specifically of Iago being constantly sexist towards his wife, Emilia, as a matter of showing the characterization and how the misogynistic nature of Iago's characterization and how that fuels his own evil in the story.
Yeah, so on Act 2, Scene 1, Iago was seeing women as items and treat them without respect. If she gave you as much lips as she gives me, she'd be sick of her by now.
On the contrary, she's a soft-spoken woman.
No, she talks too much. She's always talking when I want to sleep. I'll admit that in front of you, my lady. She keeps a bit quiet, but she's scolding me silently.
This shows how misogyny has become normalized in the Venetian society, and it shows how Iago frequently treats Emilia poorly by calling her names and diminishing her character. It also shows how Cassio and others treat Bianca badly because of her position, and they look down on her.
I also agree because like woman roles described by Iago are like they either get into bed with men or they do chores. And I think in the hierarchy of power and status, male counterparts are seen as superior, as Othello is referred to as my lord by Desdemona.
Yeah, although I agree that like misogyny has its really bad consequences and does lead to the downfall of discrimination, I think the sexism and the misogyny in Othello is more because of the personal characterization, such as Iago, because Iago believes that his wife cheated on him, and I think it's more of the personal flaw than the entire society as a whole, because clearly not every character is as misogynistic as Iago, but Iago is mainly misogynistic because of his own interpretation, so I don't think it's just a society's fault.
I agree. I also think that he talked down a lot on, or Shakespeare had like the men in the play talk down a lot on their wives because they wanted to show their wives that they were in control and had power over them, and that they were going to make them listen to whatever they had to say, and it was like very normalized, so the wives did like when they were to do things, so it would show that they were loyal to them, and that's what they wanted to prove to their husbands.
Yeah, I also think the reason that Shakespeare's stories still resonate with modern day society is because of the fact that women are still being prejudiced against, and discrimination as a whole with racism and misogyny is still a big thing. For instance, like male-dominated fields, oftentimes women who try to join those fields are oftentimes either sexualized or even disregarded because of their gender. So although the story is hundreds of years ago, it still resonates now because misogyny is still a huge thing.
I think racism is also a social commentary that Shakespeare uses in Othello. He does it when he displays Othello's confidence and calmness, while the Launtrio's racist nature against Othello is shown. This is shown on Act 1, Scene 2, page 4, where
Othello, put away your swords, they'll get rusty in the dew. Sir, your age and status inspire more respect than your own weapons do.
you evil thief, where have you hidden my daughter? You devil, you put a spell on her. Anybody with eyes could tell you that a beautiful and happy young girl like her, who's refused to marry all of the handsome young men of the city, wouldn't run off with a black thing like you unless she's been bewitched. You're something to fear, not to love. It's obvious to everyone that you've tricked her, drugged her, or kidnapped her. That's probably what happened, so I'm arresting you. Arrest this man as a practitioner of black magic. Grab him. If he struggles, use force.
Just a minute. I don't need anyone to tell me when to fight. You've accused me of some crime, of some serious crimes. Where do you want me to go to respond to these charges?
This shows how Othello is constantly reminded how he doesn't fit into society and is considered inferior despite his hard work and position. Iago reinforces these ideas by saying he's too old, not handsome, charming, and a black thorn.
Although I do agree that the racism that Othello feels is influenced by society, he doesn't necessarily know that Iago is being racist towards him, but rather I think his later insecurities that are portrayed later in the story are because of his internalized racism. For instance, he states that Desdemona liking him is the black magic black magic itself, but he never says that he uses the black magic. Although he is being accused of racist nature, I also think his racism becomes internalized over time because of the fact that he doesn't, because he's constantly because of his position of power, he also has that high societal expectation, so he puts that kind of internalized racism inside of himself.
I think the racism is systemic because the characters treat Othello poorly because of his race, and it happens because it is in Venice, which causes the insecurity. And if it weren't in Venice and it was in Othello's hometown, I don't think the same thing would happen.
I think I agree with both of that. I feel like society treats him badly, so that makes him doubt himself and people around him even more. And Shakespeare uses this example of Othello to show that how racism affects both how others treat you and how you see yourself.
I agree. I think that he felt less of himself because he had a high power, he felt, but people would put him down even though he tried to do what was best for the people around him.
Yeah, I think Shakespeare's messages overall about discrimination and also the jealousy and confirmation bias are still being portrayed in our everyday society. For instance, racism is still a major issue, especially in America, since we have so many different ethnicities and we're one of the most diverse countries. There's still racism and prejudice happening in modern society, which is why Shakespeare's stories still resonate with our modern audience.
I think it's also the same for misogyny because there's still the different pay gaps and everything, and I think jealousy also exists between relationships between different people.
So we're going to discuss the second question, which is question number 3, which is explore the psyche and humors of the characters and examine the psychological aspects of their character and how each has flaws which enables Iago to abuse them.
Shakespeare argues that flaws in humans can manipulate Othello's insecurity and Rodrigo's desperation. When personal flaws are not acknowledged, they can be weaponized by others and lead to self-destruction.
Specifically on Act 2, Scene 1, Iago shows his like manipulative nature when he says they were lusting after each other. You could tell of how they were acting. They were going to be lovers. They were so close that their breath was mingling. When two people get that intimate, it will follow soon. Disgusting, but listen to me. Let me guide you. I brought you here from Venice. Be on guard duty tonight. I'll put you in charge. Cassio doesn't know you. I'll be nearby. Make Cassio angry somehow, either by speaking too loud or insulting his military skills, or however else you want. I think this scene reveals Iago's manipulative nature, that he's this, he's a bit like on the more phlegmatic side with his like human like psyche and humors, because he's definitely more, he's really cunning and understands human nature, which is why he's able to manipulate Rodrigo so easily.
I think these characteristics were actually developed by Iago. Were not developed, but it was inherent in Iago, because he responds to promotion of Rodrigo in a disapproving manner and shows lack of sympathy in character in Othello and lack of remorse when Othello realizes that he has been fooled by Iago.
I agree. I think that he knew how to talk to people without them like thinking he was like trying to like manipulate them, because everybody thought he was a good person and they thought he was an honest man, but he used that against them and fed them like lies.
I agree with that. I think because he knew that everyone considered him a good person and just trying to be loyal, they believed him more, and it just shows how he could use all characters to leave like a web of lies to his.
But I think Iago's psychological nature of being more on the evil side was more developed because he was angry about the fact that he resented Cassio, which is why he's trying to get revenge on him, because Cassio, because of his elitism and who he knew, he was able to get the lieutenant position even though Iago had more battle experience. So I think his evil, although isn't a rational human decision, is still more developed over time rather than being inherent inside of him. Secondly, Othello's characterization. Shakespeare purposely shows Othello's flaw of jealousy and insecurity, which enables Iago to easily abuse Othello by constantly making him believe in flaws in society, believe in the stuff that he's trying to tell Othello and manipulate him constantly.
And this is seen in Act 3, Scene 3, page 12. This Iago is extremely honest and good, and he knows a lot about human behavior. If it turns out that she really is running around on me, I'll send her away, even though it'll break my heart. Maybe because I'm black and I don't have a nice manners like courtiers do, or because I'm getting old, but that's not much. She's gone and I've been cheated on. I have no other choice but to hate her. Oh, what a cursed marriage it is. We think our beautiful wives belong to us, but their desires are free. I'd rather be a toad in a moldy basement than to only have a part of someone I love, sharing the rest of her with others. This is the plague of important men. Our wives betray us more than those of poor men. It's our destiny like that. We are destined to be betrayed when we are born. Oh, here she comes. If she cheated on me, then heaven itself is fake. I don't believe it.
It just shows the contrast of how he was portrayed as confident, but now he's like really insecure. Because when he questions Desdemona's relationship and if she's been faithful to him, he starts doubting whether he's actually like, I don't know, important.
I think the major flaw that Shakespeare is portraying using Othello's characterization is his insecurity. Although Othello showed confidence in the beginning, I think it was more of a facade because of his high position, but I think deep down he was always a bit insecure because Desdemona rejected so many attractive guys, and Othello's on the older side and isn't conventionally attractive, as Iago says before. I think it's more of the fact that Iago abuses Othello's nature of being trusting of him, but also being a bit insecure inside despite having the confident facade, and makes him more likely to be prone to the manipulation of Iago.
I also agree that this is inherent and already in Othello's nature, because Othello bears emotions like jealousy and understands he lacks manners. If he was truly calm and secure, then he would not have fallen to Iago's manipulation.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he didn't really like think highly of himself because um, he was like easily manipulated, and it didn't take a lot for him to believe that Desdemona was cheating on him.
I think adding on to that, he's always been told that Cassio is more charming than him, and even by Desdemona's father, who told him that he wasn't good enough for his daughter.
Yeah, and then thirdly, I think Shakespeare also used the characterization of Rodrigo, who's like one of Iago's original friends, to show that Rodrigo is portrayed more of a choleric fool because of his desperation to get Desdemona, and Iago deliberately abuses this tragic flaw inside of Rodrigo, the fact that he's desperate and also a bit naive and easily trusts what Iago's trying to say.
In Act 1, Scene 3, page 13, Rodrigo says, "It's silly to live when life is torture. Only fear is death."
Oh, how stupid. I've been alive for 28 years and I've never met a man who knew what was good for him. I'd rather be a baboon than kill myself out of love for some woman I can't have.
What should I do? I know it's so foolish to be so much in love, but I can't help it.
Can't help it? Nonsense. What we are is up to us. Our bodies are like gardens, and our willpower is like the gardener, depending on what plant, weeds or lettuce, or one kind of herb rather than a variety. The garden will either be barren and useless or rich and productive. If we didn't have rational minds, our counterbalance, our emotions and desires, our body urges would take over. We'd end up in ridiculous situations. Thankfully, we have reasons to cool our raging lives. In my opinion, what you call love is just an offshoot of love.
I think the nature of Rodrigo is that he's bad-tempered, which is why I think he's more choleric, and also he's a bit foolish, which is why Iago is easily able to abuse him. I think he's a victim of Iago's manipulation. It's not necessarily Rodrigo's own fault, but it's also because Iago knows psychologically he's smart enough to recognize his flaw inside of Rodrigo and abuse it.
I kind of disagree because Rodrigo's already suicidal before everything, and he lacks the knowledge, status, and wealth, and which causes him to be blinded by lust and desperation, and he believes Iago can do that.
I think it's Iago's fault that Rodrigo was manipulated because he blindly followed his instructions to buy the diamonds with all his money, and before this he was already emotionally stable because of his suicidal thoughts.
And then I think this is also revealed later because of like how much Iago didn't actually care about Rodrigo, because he ends up actually killing Rodrigo at the end. He never cared about him and just needed him for the money and in order for his plan to unfold. And I think in modern society, the flaws of the characters of Othello and Rodrigo and Iago are still apparent. Because for instance, with Rodrigo, a lot of people are too trusting, and a lot of times desperation leads to them doing stuff for their own, for what they want.
These characters and humors and psychs, I think it's already all seen in modern society as these characteristics such as vulnerability or blinding trust shown from Rodrigo, and the transition from confident to a lesser confident person through Othello, and Iago being blatantly sociopathic. I think that's all present in current society. Alright, thank you.
This is crazy.